Everyone says you're a man who eats 8 meals in 3 days, but this time you're feasting food everywhere. This time you've come to Norway for a challenge in a remote region 100 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle. You flew by helicopter over rugged mountains, then were dropped onto a peak, rarely having to survive in such a frigid polar region. So you're a little nervous, survival factors constantly flashing in your mind. The urgent need is to find a water source and shelter. Clearly a barren, desolate mountaintop is not an ideal choice. Looking down, the foothills seem much more promising. Descending is a must. You strap on your heavy backpack and begin the descent, not stopping along the way, so your pace is fast. Quickly descending, when you reach a snowy patch you just sit and slide down. It's thrilling and exciting. After sliding for a bit you stand up and continue your journey. After a few hours you finally reach the dense forest at the foot of the mountain covered in moss. You scoop up a handful of moss and put it in your mouth, drinking the cool natural water, refreshing your spirit to continue forward. Along the way you see a lot of moss on the trees, which is good material for bedding. Harvest as much as possible. You also discover a birch tree. Its bark is highly flammable and very useful. You collect some to carry with you. As you walk the sky darkens and the situation seems unstable. You try to find a place to rest for the night. On the way you find a pile of dry grass. Fearing the cold night without fire, you immediately stuff a handful into your pants. The important thing is to keep Peter stable first, then continue looking for a warm shelter to rest for the night. But unfortunately, no matter how hard you search, you can't find a suitable place. It's completely dark now. You have no choice but to pick an open spot, lean against your backpack and rest temporarily for the night. You can only rest like this. By midnight the temperature drops terrifyingly. You can't sleep at all that night. You have to turn on the heating element to warm up, doing a few exercises repeatedly, then lie down to rest for a bit. Later you get up and punch the camera a few times, then walk around to keep warm. You do this until dawn. It was truly a tough night, gritting your teeth and enduring. Today you must find a proper shelter. You set off again, continuing through the forest. Before long you discover a small stream. So you follow the stream for a long distance and finally see it flowing into a large river. At this point a rare smile appears. As you get closer you see that the area is very open. Although the temperature is still bone-chilling given the current situation, you assess this as an ideal place to camp. You choose a spot by the riverbank under a tree as your shelter and start gathering dry grass to prepare to set up camp. You go to the nearby stream, rummaging through rocks, hoping to find a type of stone that can create sparks. While you're struggling you discover a metal rod on the ground. Combined with the stone you just picked up, you have a complete set of primitive fire starting tools. You sit down by a rock preparing tinder. With one hand holding the stone and the other holding the striker, you begin to strike them together forcefully and continuously. Slicing while struggling, he discovered a metal rod on the ground. Combined with the stone he just picked up, that was enough for a primitive fire starting kit. He sat down by a rock outcrop, prepared tinder, held a stone in one hand and the slicing rod in the other, and began striking them together repeatedly. But after nearly an hour of trying, no fire has been lit, yet he remains calm. He knows that if there's no fire tonight the cold will torment him as it did before, and he doesn't want to experience that again. With an unyielding spirit he finally manages to spark the first flame. He gathers dry grass and blows gently, coaxing the embers to glow, then the fire erupts brilliantly. He has successfully started his first campfire. He carefully moves the fire to the base of a tree near the riverbank, then goes to gather more firewood. The fire burns strong again and he begins to build his shelter. He finds a long log and props it against a tree trunk as a main beam. Beneath it he uses stones to form a frame. While searching for more branches he unexpectedly discovers a bush with small berries, enough to supplement his nutrition for now. He gathers all the berries. He piles them up, then adds soft leaves as bedding. It feels quite comfortable. And so a long day ends. The next morning, entering the third day, the air outside is freezing with ice covering everything. But he slept soundly last night, calling it one of the best sleeps he's had since the challenge began. Now with water, fire and shelter secured, it's time to find some protein. He ventures out onto the frozen ground. The ice is slick and smooth and he slips as soon as he steps on it. He tries again and this time he successfully navigates across. He continues into the forest. At this moment he sees something resembling a snake moving on the ground. At first glance it looks like food. He peers closer and realizes it's just water flowing beneath the ice. He must be so hungry that he's hallucinating. He presses on to an area without snow, reaching the base of a rocky cliff. Above there are some pine trees and their roots might be edible. Thinking this, he climbs up, pulls off some roots and gathers them. He eats them immediately, finding them fresh, crisp and hydrating. He has a good amount left. After eating he feels satisfied. He stands up and walks back to camp. Upon returning he discovers that the stream, which was dry yesterday, is now overflowing. This is due to the tide coming in, flooding his campsite. Just then he notices the campfire isn't burning strongly. Upon closer inspection he realizes the ground beneath is extremely damp, saturated with water. He gets to work removing all the moss from the ground, clearing the area and then relighting the fire. The fire immediately burns much better. After eating and drinking his fill, all that's missing is a roof. He plans to build a lean-to which will block the wind and reflect heat from the fire. He goes into the forest to gather branches, propping them against the main beam, carefully arranging each branch. He continues to complete the structure amidst the white snow, then covers it with thick patches of moss. After more than an hour, the lean-to roof is finally finished. It looks somewhat stable. However, the main beam seems a bit weak. He decides to add another large piece of wood for support. And so the shelter is complete. The sky is also darkening. He sits by the campfire, remembering the grilled pork belly with crispy edges. The next morning, as soon as he wakes up, he runs, almost collapsing as the entire structure gives way. The heavy rain all night caused the moss to absorb water, increasing its weight and breaking the beam. With no other option, he has to dismantle it and start from scratch. He finds a larger, sturdier log and rebuilds. The frame then covers the roof with moss again. It takes quite some time to finish. This time it seems more stable. His face finally broke into a smile, but the rain kept falling and his stomach was growling. He went to the riverbank at low tide, dug around for a while, and finally found a small shrimp to stave off the hunger pangs. He continued to search. Finding a few snails and some rather large clams, he hurried back and put them all on the fire to roast. After a while, he picked up the largest clam, its flesh succulent but still covered in mud. Without even rinsing it, he put it in his mouth to satisfy his hunger. It was gritty, tasting mostly of sand and dirt, but he had no other choice. At least it was protein. After finishing the clams, he moved on to the snails. He cracked each one open with a stone. The taste was incredible. He ate them greedily, losing count of how many. Full, he lay down in his shelter, a sense of bliss washing over him. The next morning it was still drizzling. He got up and gathered some large pieces of wood, putting them on the fire to dry. He didn't go out that day, staying by the fire to keep warm and ward off the cold. Towards midnight, as he slept soundly, the fire suddenly flared up. The thick smoke made him cough and wake up, realizing the entire shelter was on fire. Fortunately, his immense luck and resilience, having survived 2 near-death experiences, kept him going. He would never rush again. After the rain that lasted all night, the fire couldn't have spontaneously reignited. It might have caught on moss or wet material. Regardless, luck was on his side. As dawn broke, he decided to look for protein for his last meal. Following a stream, he gradually reached a small, promising cove. Upon closer inspection, he saw it was filled with sea urchins and sea cucumbers, an astonishing amount. Now protein was abundant. Without hesitation, he bent down and scooped up handfuls. In no time, his hands were full. Besides sea urchins, there were sea cucumbers. After days of starvation, he finally had a proper meal. He brought it all back to the shelter and put it on the fire to roast. After a while, he picked up a sea urchin to try. Prying it open, the creamy, rich liquid inside was exquisite. This time the meat was very clean. He ate it immediately. After finishing the sea urchins, he turned to the sea cucumbers. They were cool and crisp, followed by a few pieces of charred sea cucumber. He had eaten a lot today. After eating, he stood up and gathered some nearby moss, spreading it on his bed to make it softer. He lay down and found it quite comfortable. A fulfilling day had passed. The next morning, his last day in Naui, he woke up early. He twisted some dry grass together, wrapped it in bark, lit it, put on his backpack, and went to the bay to build a smoke signal. As thick smoke billowed upwards, a boat gradually approached the shore. He boarded the boat, his challenge successfully completed. In the next segment, he woke up and started a fire to roast a skunk, a dish that even Bear Ogreen praised after eating. He described it as taking a beef steak, smearing it with dog feces, and then shoving it straight into your mouth. But for him, a survivalist, it was a rare source of protein. He said skunk tasted amazing. After eating, he had fruit for dessert to balance his nutrition. The location for this challenge was the desert region of southern Arizona. Now, it's the hottest and driest time of the year, as it's located right on the border with Mexico. Hundreds of illegal immigrants are processed here every year. He decides to take on the challenge of survival in this harsh land. To ensure the utmost authenticity, he sheds his quilted clothes, still naked. No food, no water, just a camera and a satellite phone to use when needed. Not even a single hair on his head. All hope rests on chance for the next 10 days, with temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. He hasn't gone far before he's so exhausted he just wants to collapse to avoid heat stroke or dehydration. He decides to follow the dry riverbed to find water. The sand underfoot has been baking in the sun all day. Stepping on it is like walking on hot coals. He hasn't gone far before he spots a wild bean bush full of pods. This is an edible fruit with a mild sweetness, and although it's calorie rich, the most urgent task is to find a source of fresh water. He eats a few pods to line his stomach and sets off again. Half an hour later, his stomach growling and mouth dry, he has to rest for a bit, then continues walking and resting until the sun begins to set. He decides to stop and set up camp for the night, but first he needs to shelter his companion Peter, as it might get windy at night. Quickly utilizing dry leaves, he fashions a simple shelter, but there aren't enough materials, only covering the essential parts. Taking advantage of the remaining light before dark, he goes to find materials to start a fire. He finds a zucca tree, a very dry and flammable type of wood. With a little preparation, he has enough material to make a primitive fire starting kit. He prepares to start a fire for his first night in this scorching wilderness. Then comes a fire starting kit made of flint and steel. After nearly 40 minutes of struggle, he finally gets the first spark. He quickly transfers it to the tinder he's prepared. As expected, the small flame soon ignites. Having a fire is a major turning point, but water is still a matter of survival. Fortunately, there's a prickly pear cactus nearby which can at least provide temporary hydration. As soon as he returns to camp, he begins his mini feast. The prickly pear is cool, juicy, refreshing, and mild. As night falls, exhausted, he sleeps early in the flickering firelight. The next morning, while walking around the camp, he discovers strange markings on a rock. Looking closely, he sees signs of manual grinding. He suspects this might have been an ancient settlement abandoned due to scarcity of food. These pits must have been formed by grinding food. His eyes scan the surroundings and he spots lush vegetation ahead. Based on his decades of experience in the wilderness, he's sure there's water there. Without further ado, he grabs his backpack and heads out. But when he arrives, he only finds dry grass and hot winds with no water at all. He's utterly disappointed and has to change direction towards a nearby stream. He arrives a while later and discovers a swarm of buzzing insects around. As he approaches, he sees a pool of green liquid. It looks like it contains the entire periodic table. A normal person drinking it would surely die, or worse, bid farewell to life. But the name of Stafford is no ordinary man. This is nothing because he was thirsty. He confidently took a full gulp. After drinking, his mouth smiled brightly. There was water. Next was to solve the hunger, but he didn't forget sun protection. He mixed some saliva with stone powder, making his own 100% organic sunscreen. Done, he looked up at the large cactus and drooled. The fruit growing on top was a very reliable food source. Without hesitation, he grabbed a few fruits from the tree. It tasted sour and sweet. Eating it made him feel alive, and there were many, plus it was a vegetable carbohydrate. Right after that, he started to get busy. Soon he harvested a large pile. This fruit is a vegetable. The starch and seeds inside also provide a large amount of fat. Because there were too many, he decided to dry them to enjoy them slowly. Later, when everything was done, the sun began to set and night also descended. After a day of effort, he finally gathered the 3 basic survival elements. Peacefully slept a good night's sleep. On the morning of the 3rd day, he saw layers of clouds appearing on the horizon. Based on experience, this was a sign of impending rain. So the top priority today was to build a shelter. Wood from the acacia tree nearby, it was both flexible and strong, perfect for the frame. After building a circular frame, he went to find some bushes to cover it for rain and wind protection. Finally, it was completed. It took a whole day. By nightfall, indeed, the sky began to rumble with thunder. Soon it rained heavily. Fearing a sudden flood in the middle of the night tonight, he might have to stay up all night. On the morning of the 4th day, after a restless night, luckily he was safe and sound. Today's mission was to get some protein to nourish his body. Setting traps near the water source was definitely the optimal plan. After a few steps of preparation, the first trap was ready to increase the success rate and achieve protein freedom. One trap was not enough, so he continued to set up another trap near it. The principle of the trap was to use balanced wooden branches to support a large stone, adding another branch with bait as a trigger. As soon as the prey touched the bait, the heavy stone would immediately send it to the underworld. He spent the whole day setting up the traps. When everything was ready, all that was left was to rely on luck. It had been several days. In the past few days, he had only survived on cactus fruit, occasionally checking the traps, but still nothing. This morning was the same. He went to check early. The first trap was still the same. Then the second trap also yielded nothing. The third trap seemed to have been triggered, but no animal was caught. After checking all of them, he was extremely disappointed. Not only did he not get any protein, but he was so hot he was about to evaporate. He hurried to find a shady spot to rest. Then he discovered that inside a cave there were carvings on the walls, obviously from a long time ago. This place was once inhabited by Native Americans. They drew pictures on the rock walls, praying to the gods for a successful hunt, just like in the pictures. Inspired by this, for the traps to be effective, he excitedly drew a rabbit using mud and saliva to create colors, and soon finished drawing a rabbit. With divine favor this time, there will surely be protein. He rushed back to camp, grabbing a large rock from nearby. He planned to set a trap near a small waterhole, but the rock was too heavy, making it incredibly difficult to set up the trap. He tried again and again, even injuring his hand, but the thought of eating rabbits soon reignited his spirit. Finally, he finished setting the trap and then waited with bated breath. The next morning, after a night of waiting, he woke up very early to check the trap. Upon arriving, he discovered the trap had sprung and he was thrilled. He quickly flipped the rock over to see. He was ecstatic. It was a skunk. The rabbit he wanted wasn't caught. How did he catch something that makes everyone run for cover? The smell it emits can travel for miles. Even Bear Grylls was shocked when he ate it. He called this dish poop-covered steak. But the name Stafford wasn't just for show. He didn't care. He dealt with it swiftly, using the rock, a skunk, for breakfast. Then he skinned it on the spot, brought it back to camp, skewered it on a stick, and placed it over the fire. He grilled it over the embers. While waiting for it to cook to commemorate this special moment, he went to pick a bunch of wild berries. He crushed them into a paste using leaves. Soon he had a large handful of paste, then wrapped a prickly pear inside. He then placed it on the fire to grill for a while longer. After 40 minutes of thorough grilling, he looked at the skunk sizzling and dripping fat. He couldn't resist and took a bite. Crispy on the outside, tender and juicy on the inside, rich and greasy. He savored it, exclaiming how delicious it was. After eating, he had a hot